On today's show, after new accusations have been made, new circumstantial evidence has been found, what will the Clippers' defense now be? You got Mark Cuban going to bat for the Clippers, and I'm going to bring on another fan who's also been adamant that we could be good to go. We could be innocent and get out of this on today's Locked On Clippers.
You are Locked On Clippers, your daily Los Angeles Clippers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir. You are locking in with the Clips. Thank you for making Locked On Clippers the first listen of your day, your team every day. I'm your host, Darian Vaziri, born and raised in LA, been a Clipper fan for 20 years, been covering the team for 5 on my own YouTube channel, Dime Dropper, and 3 right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell on the road to 8,000 subscribers, and you can listen wherever you get your podcasts. On this episode, which is brought to you by Monarch Money, head on over to monarchmoney.com to get 50% off your first year. We're going to be discussing the statements made in the press conference from Adam Silver and Mark Cuban's response defending the Clippers yet again to the new story, the new discovery with the Dennis Wong payment that I talked about on yesterday's show. And joining me to do it is a fan who has been in the comments on Twitter, on a lot of my comments, that's been strong in the sense that we're good. It's going to be big nothing burger, everything. So I figured let's bring him on the show to just talk about it all. I'm going to be playing the side of we're probably guilty, and he's going to be defending it. It's Clipper fan Ryan Joseph Murphy. Ryan, thanks for joining me on the show. Before we get started, though, everyone's going to ask and going to say, you brought a Clipper fan on. Of course he's going to say this, but just give a little background and why you feel like you can talk about this stuff, I guess.
Yeah, I will. So yes, I am a Clipper fan. I am. There's going to be some bias there. I'm sorry. I actually interned with my agent. She's a commercial and a talent agent for almost 2 years. So I saw her actually work out deals with both lawyers, with people that were actors, and then obviously talent. So, sorry, I should say the studios and the commercials themselves. So the idea that she's actually working with this stuff, I kind of got an insight a little bit of how contracts work and what kind of like agents are negotiating with talent and with the people that are paying the talent.
Okay, so let's begin first with Adam Silver's statements, which I actually thought made me feel a little better, honestly, because he went as far as to say that he didn't even know. He said, I'd never heard of the company Aspiration before. So he looked completely clueless in all this, which I don't think is a bad sign for the Clippers side of things. And then he said, as a matter of, because we keep talking about, the Clippers technically in the bylaws can get penalized for circumstantial evidence. And I kept saying, they need proof. Adam Silver basically backed me up on that by saying, as a matter of fundamental fairness, I would be reluctant to act if there was sort of a mere appearance of impropriety. I think the goal of a full investigation is to find out if there really was impropriety. So essentially, if he can't prove anything, he's not going to hammer it down, because it's also a bad look for the league. So those are Adam Silver's comments. Before we get into Mark Cuban stuff, what were your thoughts on Adam Silver's comments about the whole situation? And in addition, Pablo Torre said that the Kawhi thing wasn't even mentioned in the Board of Governors meeting, which is a little peculiar, but not bad to hear if you're a Clipper fan like us.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on the money with a lot of this. Firstly, when Silver was talking about that, I was paying close attention to what he was saying, and he was really, I felt like, trying to skirt around a little bit some of this stuff, which is the league is not going to just go and punish teams for things that they think are unfair. And I think he made a statement too, saying essentially something to the effect of like the public sometimes gets things wrong that are not there. And so, look, I think know as Clipper fans at this point, everyone wants Kawhi to burn, I feel like, and Ballmer to burn. It's kind of like pitchforks out there for a lot of us as Clipper fans because they think that we're cheating. And so I looked at all of the things that Silver said, and I really felt like he was saying to the reporters there and to the greater NBA ecosystem, we are not just going to punish the Clippers if we don't find anything. We have to find something that finds them guilty of what it is that Pablo Torre was insinuating, which is cap circumvention, that they were circumventing the salary cap by paying Kawhi money through Aspiration to circumvent the cap that way. But they have to find something that paints them as guilty. Now, whether or not that is like a smoking gun. Because remember, in the Joe Smith case, they had a handwritten note. They actually had a note that implicated the Timberwolves in that cap circumvention scheme. So that's why they threw the book at them. They said, we have all the evidence we need. You guys did it. But with the Clippers, they hired a third party to investigate it. So it's like, okay, so are we going to get phone records? Are we going to get transcripts? Are we going to get texts, emails? I'm going to assume they're going to look at all this stuff. And the Clippers, to their credit, already said, you can look at whatever you want. We're going to tell you this right now. And Ballmer, I believe in that interview, also said, we didn't go to Aspiration first. They came to us. They came to us and emailed us and said, can we talk to Kawhi? And per the NBA bylines, that's totally legal. And they said, yeah, you can. Here's an introduction. Go on your way and do your thing.
So let's talk about Mark Cuban now and the stuff that he's come out and said, because he's been defending us like crazy. But he goes in a tweet, Sandberg, a founder of Aspiration in 2020 and then 2021 pre-Clippers, borrows a total of $145 million from a bank using his Aspiration shares as collateral. The bank says that's not enough, so he pays a guy $12.3 million to go Madoff and falsify statements to make it look like he has $86 million in stocks and $25 million in cash, and uses that fake info to guarantee the Sandberg loan. By the time he gets an investment from Ballmer or Wong, he knows he's going to jail at some point. Then he puts the guy he paid the $12.3 million to on the Aspiration board of directors, and they get the CEO, who had a background of as a prosecutor of financial crimes, to leave in 2022, right as Sandberg defaulted on his fraudulently acquired loan. Everything that happens with the Clippers is from two guys who knew they were effed and would do anything to stay out of jail. And he said, in basically clarifying that tweet, he goes, in summary, a guy fakes documents and pays someone $12.3 million to do the same so he can get tens of millions for himself, all before he does anything with the Clippers in 2021. So he's basically saying he's like a criminal or scamming before he even does anything with the Clippers. All of Pablo's sources worked for this guy. This is now going back to Cuban's tweet. All of Pablo's sources worked for this guy, who was the chairman of the board and who placed the guy he paid $12.3 million on that very same board to help him operate the company to save their asses. Didn't work. Both of these guys pleaded guilty and will go to jail. No chance they tried to scam the Clippers, Ballmer, Wong, his daughter, KL2, to cover up their crimes. So make what you can of that statement. What is Mark Cuban saying? Do the, classic, explain it to someone like they're five kind of thing with that.
Yeah, no, I think there's a lot here. Firstly, Dime, to like kind of dissect. Firstly, it's the fact of, Pablo Torre's sources have all been anonymous at this point, right? So everyone that's appearing in this podcast are anonymous sources that are coming out saying, we work for Aspiration, we're seeing this stuff. Okay, great. That's fine. I mean, I get it. You want to keep anonymity, and the NBA uses a lot of anonymous sources. But at the same time, just today, and I know this is kind of directly correlating, but The Athletic dropped an article from the former CEO, Andre Cherny, Aspiration's co-founder, who, by the way, did not go to prison. So this is not the one that went to prison. He left the company in 2022, but he went on record today and says, no one has asked to talk to me. I spoke with The Athletic directly, and I actually talked to them about Kawhi Leonard's contract, and it wasn't a no-show contract. There were actually stipulations inside the contract that he had to fulfill, or else we were going to terminate it. So there's a lot here that I feel like is just, we're still not getting to the bottom quite directly of this. And we know, I think, Dom, you and I have kind of talked about this too. We know that this company was scamming people. There was tons of investors involved in this company. Leonardo DiCaprio was involved. Robert Downey Jr. was involved. Tons of other celebrities. The Red Sox were involved. There were tons of companies that were investing in Aspiration. So it wasn't just Ballmer. Additionally, Ballmer's investment of $50 million was actually part of a $350 million investment that I believe Oak Ridge was like doing as a whole. So that $50 million that he invested was part of a larger investment. So it wasn't just an idea of, well, I'm just putting this $50 million in so Kawhi can get paid this money. No, it was part of a larger investment for Aspiration because they all believed in what Aspiration was doing. Because again, they were completely falsifying their documents. This was a Bernie Madoff type scheme where they were borrowing money from other people to pay other people to get a loan from a bank to pay other people. I mean, this was just a circle that effectively was going round and round and round to make it look like they were a profitable company and to keep everything on the up and up. Because again, we also know this as well from Ballmer himself. They were trying to get the name deal for Intuit. They were going to pay more money to Ballmer for the name deal before Ballmer said, no, I'm okay. I don't really want to do that. So there's just a lot here that just showcases that this company was unscrupulous. They were not on the up and up with most of anything that they were doing. But again, the former CEO who did not get prosecuted and did not go to prison said, we did talk about Kawhi Leonard's deal. It wasn't a no-show deal. There were actually stipulations involved with it, and they signed it right before I left. So no, I don't know anything about cap circumvention when it comes to any of this. And he's gone on the record with that.
So that's obviously good news in the Clippers' favor. But coming up, we're going to be talking about Pablo Torre responding to Mark Cuban and Mark Cuban's continued tirade as we get into what the alibi for the Clippers really would be at this point. I got to tell you a little something about Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. I got Monarch Money to help control my finances because there were so many different ones after the fires that I just didn't even know what I was paying for. And it saved me a lot of money. It got me to get rid of some streaming services that I wasn't using. So Monarch is built for people like me with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNBA. All right, back here with Ryan to talk about all this stuff going on, and Mark Cuban and Adam Silver and the Clippers trying to eventually prove that they are innocent in all this, even though there's so much evidence, and every fan in the world that's not a Clipper fan and wants us to get dinged for this and severely penalized. So responding to Mark Cuban's big tweet or essay, I guess you can say, it's more than a tweet, that he posted on Friday morning at 9:40 Eastern time, Pablo Torre said, I already invited you back on the show next week. You told me you're too busy to do it. So how come you're tweeting all this instead of talking to me? And then Mark responded, so I have responsibility to your show. I emailed you what I thought, and you had all this info available to you already. There isn't anything new. Took me 5 minutes to find, same to post. A lot less time than doing your show again. Then Pablo said, you had all this info to you already, and there isn't anything new, is just false and not what you emailed me. You have no responsibility to me. Just thought you enjoyed respectful, fact-based dialogue. Standing offer if you find the courage. And so then Mark quote tweeted that and said, I got 100% of this info from public articles, and you still haven't said what the Clippers gained. They paid Kawhi Leonard the home team max more than anyone else could. By your logic, his leverage was he would take millions less from another team. Although before I continue that, I believe now, if the Clippers are guilty, that this agreement with Kawhi's camp was made in 2019 and they waited to find a company that could do it. Because the 2021 just makes no sense.
It doesn't. No.
Yeah, no. That's what I think happened, especially when the report came out that Kawhi's camp asked for that stuff in Toronto. That's what made it more suspect. I just think maybe it took a while for them to find the company that they could get away with doing it. If this is, of course, if the Clippers are guilty. So continuing to read the tweet, he said, so to keep him, the Clippers should pay him the max and give him $28 million via his uncle and convince the scammer to directly give him $20 million in stock that he already fraudulently pledged to a bank that was backed by a guy he fraudulently gave $12.3 million to. So then Mark basically makes a little skit or comedy about this. He goes, explain to me how those convos worked. Hey, Steve, I'm not his agent, but I'm going to take him to another team. So I guess this is Uncle Dennis he's talking about, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's got to be Uncle Dennis. Has to.
Hey, Steve, I'm not his agent, but I'm going to take him to another team, all of whom have been warned not to deal with me, so he can take less money. If you don't pay me $7 million a year for 4 years to do nothing and convince this guy Sandberg to give me $20 million of his own personal stock that he told me is worth $20 million. And by the way, it's okay if he doesn't give me a nickel to cover the taxes I will have to pay on that $20 million in stock. You'll convince him to pay a gift tax, right? Thanks, Steve. You're the best. Let's go Clips. Hey, Mr. Wong, your daughter's doing a great job. We have some obligations before our next investments come in. Can you do a bridge loan of $1.99 million? This is for the money that goes to Kawhi Leonard to do nothing. We can't pay it this quarter, and we don't want him to get mad at us. I'll get the lawyers to write it up, and of course, we will disclose it if and when we go public via SPAC. So we're all on the same page. All of this will be made public for the offering, and the whole world will know that you helped circumvent the salary cap. I'm sure Steve will tell you this is exactly what he wanted. Can you get in trouble for circumventing the cap? Does it matter at this point? Have your people call my people. Thanks. So give me your summary of all that stuff. There's a lot of big words in there, a lot of numbers being thrown around. Tell me what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, I think the big disconnect what's happening here in terms of what this story represents and what the story is the fact that we are living in a time where people want billionaires to be taxed, to be accountable, to be held to higher standards, right? And I'm not discounting any of that. But the fact of the matter remains, there's a lot of deals that happen that are signed on the dotted line that we do not simply see. And again, I just want to reference, because this athletic stuff broke right before we got on here. So this is a lot of information that I think is kind of feeding into like the questions that we have, which is, I am personally contributing to Kawhi to make this partnership possible. Sandberg wrote members of his leadership team in a May 2022 email. Aspiration CEO judged the deal to be not worth doing. For avoidance of any doubt, and any all benefit to Aspiration from the Kawhi deal is being subsidized by my contributing my equity to make this happen. I mean, I don't know, man. This just feels like, again, if the Clippers are the ones circumventing the cap, then why is that Aspiration paying for everything? So is the Clippers paying Aspiration too? And this is part of the deal. It feels to me, again, part of this entire structure of what's happening here is that Aspiration desperately wanted to get in with Ballmer, and they wanted to get the naming rights to Intuit. They wanted to get more of his money to invest in the company, and in doing so wanted to keep good with Kawhi and keep paying him. That doesn't mean that the Clippers payments were going directly to Kawhi. They could have gone directly to Aspiration to invest in them because they believed in the company, but that doesn't mean that they were paying for Aspiration to pay Kawhi. And I think that's the crux of this entire argument for the NBA. They have to prove beyond what the shadow of doubt, I believe, that the payments the Clippers were making were going directly to Aspiration to pay for Kawhi. Otherwise, this is just a deal between the sponsor and a player, which is totally illegal by the NBA guidelines. And I think that's what's being missed really by most of the NBA fans, and just like kind of all of us in the fray is like, we're thinking, oh, well, this is a shady deal. Kawhi can't do this deal. I mean, the players can do whatever deal they want with the sponsors. The NBA allows that. So that's not the issue. The issue are the Clippers paying Aspiration solely to pay Kawhi? And it just all the breadcrumbs we're seeing right now are just saying no, they're not.
The thing is, though, and I agree with those points, because where it got suspect was beyond the no-show job. You saw that in the contract. There were statements that were saying if it's in Kawhi's beliefs, he has to do this. So there were outs, which is a little bit weird, for business, in my opinion.
I'll push back on that a little, just because it's hard, because even in celebrity deals, the problem is that these celebrities have outs in their contracts. They literally have things that just say, because what a lot of the times what these companies are doing is they're partnering with celebrities so that they can go to other investors and say, see who's a part of this? Isn't this so cool? Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, Kawhi Leonard, all these people are part of it. And I think for Aspiration, their entire goal was that we need to keep in the good graces of Steve Ballmer. We need to be able, he's a billionaire. He can cut us a fat check for this. He believes, again, we all know this. Ballmer is a big believer in climate change. He's a big believer in Democrat policies, which is exactly what this company was about. So I think a big aspect of this too was the fact that he was like, oh, this is a great cause that I'm supporting. It's a great business, that all their financials look good on paper, because again, they're forging the documents. So I just, when I look at, again, all of the breadcrumbs that we're receiving, especially from this Athletic article that dropped today, it just feels like that the Clippers themselves were being scammed, and that Aspiration was paying Kawhi Leonard out of their own pocket to keep in the good graces of Steve Ballmer. And if that's, again, who knows how long this investigation is going to last time? We have no idea. It's by a third party now with the NBA, but I just feel like a lot of the breadcrumbs are pointing to the Clippers' innocence at this point.
I think the point about the Clippers getting conned is true no matter what, because Aspiration was fraudulent. But my question is this: do you believe that there's any correlation with the $48 million that Kawhi was promised and the $50 million that he put in as part of the Oak Tree investment, Ballmer? Because the numbers are so close, is what people are pointing out. The numbers are so close. People said that, there was a line in the contract that said if Kawhi leaves the team, then they can terminate the contract. But I think that's more tied to what you just said about if they're a sponsor of the Clippers. So if their star player is gone, they might change that to say Paul George back in the day or something like that, right? But
I was going to say 100%. And also additionally to that point, Dime, there's contracts all over the league that say that. All these teams have contracts with sponsors that, like, let's just say the Charlotte Hornets have a sponsorship with AT&T and someone signs with them. AT&T goes, well, if you leave the Charlotte Hornets, we're gonna disappear your contract. That's very normal. That happens to all these players.
But what do you think about the first question I asked? The $48 million that Kawhi was essentially promised and $50 million being invested from Steve Ballmer.
So the only major reason I'll push back on that is because remember when Steve Ballmer invested in Aspiration, that was 8 months before Kawhi Leonard inked a deal with them. It was almost, I think it was like, it was close to a year.
That's right.
It's a long time. So, I mean, again, with the amount of money that was being funneled inside of Aspiration constantly, it just seems to me that money may have already been gone by the time that Aspiration did the deal with Kawhi Leonard and said, we're going to pay him. Remember, they were paying him in quarterly sums, right? Or like, I believe it was quarterly sums, like either 3 or 4 times a year of like, whatever payments that equaled like $7 million a year for whatever long his contract was. So again, it's just hard for me to believe that when Ballmer invested originally in this company with a larger investment firm, that he was doing that solely for the reason of paying Kawhi Leonard. That was going to be 8 months later when Aspiration asked to do a deal with Kawhi Leonard and not the Clippers. The Clippers didn't go to to Aspiration and say, hey, you should do a deal with a Kawhi Leonard, by the way, wink, 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 nudge, nudge. No, it was Aspiration that came over to the Clippers and said, hey, by the way, can we talk to Kawhi Leonard about doing a sponsorship deal? And the Clippers said, sure, that's fine.
Well, coming up, we're going to be talking about the biggest questions the Clippers are going to have to deny, and I want to see what Ryan says about some of these. I got to tell you a little something about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel's making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And let me tell you, my Rams are 1-0. The Chargers are 1-0. Right now, I'm in Patriots country, not like the Tom Brady days when I went to college. But the Rams are playing the Titans this weekend on Sunday at 1 Eastern, 10 Pacific. We are -5.5, we as in the Rams. As far as some other games, the Niners, if you're a Niners fan, are -3 at New Orleans. The Patriots, the team where I'm at locally, are +2.5 at Miami, even though they had a rough first week. And then you've got the Chargers, who are playing Monday Night Football against the Raiders, a little AFC West showdown there. I know we got probably a lot of Raiders fans listening. The Chargers are -3 for that. So FanDuel is the place to go right now for your NFL betting needs. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, back talking about the Clippers scandal, investigation, whatever you want to call it. Now, I was pretty much with you on everything you said so far, but that's when on Thursday, the new report came out that was probably the most suspicious of all, that had even people that were saying the Clippers are probably not going to get hit with anything, that now they're in trouble. And that is the quarterly installments starting in 2022 that Aspiration was late on because they were going down the hill. And Dennis Wong, our co-CEO or 1% owner, pays almost the exact amount of money. It was $1.99 million, and Kawhi gets his $1.75 million just 9 days after. So my defense, if I'm trying to get the Clippers dinged, what you said earlier was, well, Ballmer did invest his $50 million 8 months before Kawhi, but I guess it was just, they had Kawhi sign later to make it look less suspicious. Right now, that there's no there's no hiding of this really. 9 days after, Dennis Wong, who had not previously invested in Aspiration, is investing in them when they're a sinking ship, and his daughter works for the company and he knows about it probably. How can we prove that was just coincidence? Because that, I think, is going to be the hardest thing to deny. And then people are going to probably comment this on the last episode I did. I said, what about, because that's in late 2022. What about 2023 and 2024? Because apparently Kawhi's only owed $7 million, right? That means he got $21 million. So how is he getting, if they're so, poor essentially, how is he getting $14 million in 2023 and 2024? Where is that money coming from? Are people still investing in Aspiration even though they're going down? That's very curious. But then there was a new article that came out that you just referenced, and you haven't said it yet, but it claims that in 2023, Ballmer invested $10 more million, which doesn't make us look good, I don't think. Although you could say that he's trying to help his friends and the company go downhill. I guess that would be their defense. But first, address the Dennis Wong thing. How can we prove that this is not related,
Yeah, no, I think the Dennis Wong is the most glaring bullet right now, right? So it's the scariest thing for the Clippers. And when I look at this, I look at a couple things. Is that number one, Dennis Wong's daughter worked for the company, so she was most likely filling him in on some of the aspects of what was going on. Now, Mark Cuban did appear on I believe it was Richard Jefferson's podcast today, and he referenced this exact thing, which he said, so if Dennis Wong is paying Aspiration to fund Kawhi, that money he put in as an investment was strictly to fund Kawhi, like you just brought up, why didn't that keep happening for the rest of the time that was that Aspiration was paying Kawhi? Because after that payment, there was nothing else. There was no other payments made, and Kawhi was still getting paid by Aspiration. So who's paying him? That's the question. I think that's the real question. And again, I think you and I kind of reference this. I want to see all of the investment things, because now I believe on Pablo Torre's things, all of the investment things are crossed out besides Kawhi Leonard's company and the Clippers. So all of the other investment stocks are blanked out in terms of how much amounts they're paying for. So I think the question is, was Dennis Wong investment just a strict investment just to say, hey, my daughter's a part of this company, I really want to be a part of it too, I'm going to give you guys some money, and then they just turned around and said, oh, well, we're late a couple of days for Kawhi's payment, let's just pay him right now. And then they just pay him, because again, I think that's the part that the NBA has to prove, is that if Dennis Wong is doing this strictly to pay Kawhi, there has to be some aspect, right, of a paper trail of some sort besides just a straight payment to Kawhi. Otherwise, you can reference any of the investments that they got, and they just said, well, we just took this money and we just paid it Kawhi. I mean, I don't know how you prove that other than that. And again, that's what kind of Mark Cuban was referencing, was the idea of why is he just making one payment to Aspiration when they need to do all these other payments? And I think the other big thing that Mark Cuban referenced, and I think is important here, he talked about the carbon credits. And I think that's a big point. He said effectively, if the Clippers were really trying to circumvent the cap, they could have bought carbon credits from Aspiration and paid them that way, rather than just strict investments, because if they were getting the carbon credits, they're not traceable. So I think that there's a lot of questions still here that, for me, that don't really add up. Again, can you say that Ballmer and Wong are just very stupid and they just did this, and they were just idiots about this? Sure, you could say that's potential, right? But I think in the end of the day, it really does look like to me they were just strictly investing in the company, and that the payments to Kawhi were just the company getting caught up on their payments. So that's my 2 cents about that.
The only thing I'll say is, when you said, Wong is investing in the company, and just because, he hears that he just wants to help. That's the part where it's like, he really wants to help a company that's going down the hill. I know his daughter worked for them, but they had all these, at that point, stuff was out that they've been a little bit fraudulent, right?
My question just is to the league and to everyone else who's saying this, we need some evidence of other than just bank statements going back and forth. If there's no emails, if there's no communication other than, here you go, here's your thing. All we have now is Aspiration's own communications with Kawhi Leonard and Aspiration's communications with the Clippers brass. How are we supposed to know that these are the payments that are supposed to go there? Is there any tangible communications at all that implicate this to say, we're trying to get this a deal made so that Kawhi Leonard can be paid to circumvent the cap? I just think, again, with the contract, the way it's worded, with Aspiration's own kind of like dealings, and the fact that Ballmer was involved just in it as investment wise, I don't know, man. I think it's just so hard to prove this. I really do. And I think that's going to be the biggest challenge for the NBA. I really do.
So I guess the best point is that when Wong invested that 1.99 million, he didn't know the state of the company. But the thing is, his daughter worked there. That's the only thing.
And I don't disagree with you, but again, she was still employed there. That's the big thing, is that she wasn't laid off. She was still an employee there, and she's talking to him and just saying, oh yeah, the company's doing great. Because remember, they were fraudulent financials. And Cuban said this too, I believe, on the Richard Jefferson podcast. I've been scammed before. I've been scammed by these companies that are showing me this paperwork and saying everything looks great on the up and up. And then behind it, it's a Bernie Madoff scheme where they're just turning around that money, keep turning around to make it seem like they're not unscrupulous people, while at the same time, they're going around everybody trying to collect more investments so that they can pay their bills and look on the up and up.
But is $1.99 million really going to help them with all this money being thrown around? That's a question mark as well, right? That's nothing compared to the money that's being thrown around here.
Sure, but I mean, I know that some of these other celebrity investors were not spending that much. I know that too. That like, so I think like Robert Downey Jr. and Leonardo DiCaprio's investments in this company were like between 2 and 5 million. So there weren't like a lot. So I think that's another question is, is Wong's investment weird with the payment of Kawhi? Sure. I'm the first person to say it looks weird, but that doesn't mean guilt. It doesn't mean that. We have to know that that is actually what they're trying to do. Otherwise, this is just an investment. And he's just saying, I just want to help. I feel like this is a good company. My CEO's telling me it's a good company. My daughter works there. It seems like it's an up and up. Yeah, sure. I'll invest a little. Why
wouldn't he invest more if they really wanted to help them? That's the part where they're going to
get the question too.
Right. And do you think that, man, and there's so many layers to this, which is very fascinating. But I guess let's keep going with the Mark Cuban. Pablo Torres said, Mark, the Clippers gained Kawhi Leonard in exactly the way that Kawhi and his reps pitched Toronto in 2019. No-show job plus equity. The Clippers also gained a $300 million sponsorship deal that is all over public articles. Here's a question. Why are you doing this? And then Mark said, I'm doing this because it's fun. You feel so positive that you were right. My experiences say otherwise. It's a fun challenge, kind of like doing a crossword puzzle. Is it feasible to you that his representative pitched Aspiration and Joe Sandberg saw value in having Kawhi on the cap table, so he did a deal? That's what you referenced earlier. Said, how much do you know about Sandberg and how he valued having a deal with Kawhi Leonard? Isn't that a critical element in all this, in which I'm pretty sure Pablo Torre did not respond at that point? But yeah, the Dennis Wong part is going to be the most interesting part to prove, because that 1.99 million going to a lot of that going to Kawhi, almost the same amount going to Kawhi. We don't know exactly how much of it.
Yeah, everyone was saying, oh, well, the commission off the top, or the off the top was a commission fee for Aspiration. But then again, I just ask, and I think that the bigger question that we just have to keep asking about this thing, why didn't he keep investing and paying Kawhi? Why did he just pay him one time? After and then again, Aspiration was still going. They still had the deal with Kawhi. So where's all the money coming from that's going to pay Kawhi for the rest of that money? We don't know. And that's, I think, again, that's kind of the issue I have with this entire case, is that one snippet does look suspicious. But then when you bring out the entirety of this snippet, you're going, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Why would Dennis Wong just invest one time in to pay Kawhi Leonard and not keep paying it if that was what he was supposed to do?
Yeah, I think seeing some of the other payments as well are important. How Kawhi Leonard was getting paid in those years after, especially if the company really was going downhill. There's going to be so many questions. To finish off, Mark Cuban said 4 hours ago from us recording this is an informative article that discusses how Sandberg tried to use foreign celebrities. Oh, I was going to ask this. Do you think it's suspicious how much more Kawhi Leonard's getting paid than these other celebrities? That's part of what they're going to use. This is an absurd amount of money for doing nothing, whereas Robert Downey and these guys actually did some kind of branding for Aspiration.
Yeah, I mean, and some kind of branding is the question there. I mean, someone yesterday was like, see, Leonardo DiCaprio did a tweet. And I'm like, well, okay, so one tweet equates to $5 million worth of investment. Like, I think it's really tough with this entirety of this thing, because again, in his own contract, he said that he doesn't have to do anything. And like, again, the NBA, they're not going to come after Kawhi for signing that deal. How can they? Like, that's a deal between a sponsor and a player. Like, if that's the deal they worked out, that's the deal they worked out. And people are mad because they're like, well, I should be getting paid that much to do nothing. I mean, of course, we'd all love to get paid to do nothing, but that's not the deal we worked out with whatever employer that we have. So I think that's the hard part, is that everyone says, well, he shouldn't have gotten that amount of money. And I'm like, well, but how are you to dictate that? That's what this company wanted to do. What is anything else? Like, and again, that's, if we have a paper trail leading us to Ballmer to say, oh, well, I'm investing this much because you need to pay Kawhi this much, and this is how much we agreed to, then yeah, great, they're guilty. Throw the book at them. But without that, it just looks like it's a deal between a sponsor and a player. And if that's the case, there's nothing to see here. And that's the hard part.
So Andre Cherny, that you referenced that earlier. That's something people should read, that article from the New York Times. Mark Cuban said, read this, and posted it less than 2 hours before we're recording this. and referenced that when reached by The Athletic, Andre Cherny disputed that Leonard had a no-show contract. He said the beliefs clause is standard for celebrity endorsements, which you said earlier, and that the company could end the agreement if Leonard didn't perform on his end. And then he said basically he was gone after that, so he had no knowledge of what was going on after he left Aspiration. And then he said Ballmer's 2023 investment was a part of a fundraising round made up almost entirely of previous Aspiration investors, with Wong being the lone exception. The company hoped to raise $75 million in fresh money, but came up nearly $9 million short. A vast majority of the shares were bought up by Aspiration co-founder Joe Sandberg and Ibrahim Al-Husseini, another Aspiration board member. Sandberg later agreed to plead guilty to fraud charges brought by the Justice Department. So then Cuban goes on his own. He says, a reminder, Sandberg was falsifying company documents. The investors were not getting accurate information. So a lot of people are coming at him for this and saying Cuban's in the wrong and all this. But wow, oh my God, Andre Cherny tweeted an hour ago.
Yeah, he did. No, he did. I was gonna say he actually tweeted out to me. He says, no one has approached me besides The Athletic to talk about this. And remember, this guy didn't go to prison. This is the CEO that was up and on the up and up and was legal with the company. And that's why I'm saying none of Pablo Torre's sources have come forward. They are all anonymous. This CEO has come out and said, hey, I was part of the deals with Aspiration and Kawhi. I didn't see anything unscrupulous. This is what I'm seeing right here. Everything looked to be on the up and up with me. So I think that's a huge bullet dodge for the Clippers personally.
I think this is just the beginning of all this. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me, and let people know they can find you.
Yeah, man. You can find me at other Ryan Murphy. Like I said, I'm a huge Clipper fan. Dime, thank you so much for having me on, man. It's a great show. We're going to get through this. I'm so excited for the upcoming season, regardless of all this stuff happening. But I do believe we're going to come out all the better for this. I really do.
And you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Dime Dropper Pod. Subscribe to the channel Dime Dropper. And, of course, Locked On Clippers on the road to 8,000 subscribers. Have a great weekend, Clipper Nation. The age-old proverb continues. Go Clippers.